Welcome to Historically Speaking, news and notes from the Westchester Township History Museum, located at 700 West Porter Avenue in Chesterton. The museum is a cultural and educational service of Westchester Public Library. I'm Serena Ard, curator of the museum. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for listening today. I hope all of you had a wonderful Halloween weekend. It's really just hard to believe that Thanksgiving is soon going to be here, and just how quickly this year is going by, and knowing that soon I'm going to have to start my Christmas shopping, and I don't want to. But if you recall last month, I talked about the ongoing celebration of Indiana Dunes State Park's 100th anniversary. I highlighted the process and some difficulties in purchasing the land for the park. Today, I want to take a look at some of the early construction and subsequent destruction of buildings and other improvements in the park. But first, let's look at some of the things coming up at the museum. Just as a reminder, the museum's parking configuration has changed as the YMCA Healthy Living Campus constructs its driveway connection on Porter Avenue. The museum's only driveway for both entrance and exit is located on the west side of the building, and all parking spaces are located on the north side. If you have any questions or problems figuring it out, please don't hesitate to call and ask. On Thursday, November 13 at 2 p.m., the Flashbacks will be back at the Brown Mansion for Music at the Museum. The Flashbacks perform a variety of songs from the last 500 years, songs that people enjoyed singing at home and in their communities. You may even recognize some of the songs and want to sing along. The annual museum gift shop holiday sale is also returning on Saturday, November 22nd. Get 10% off your entire purchase of Duneland area themed gifts. The sale runs through December 27. November's trivia night will take place on Tuesday, November 25 at 7 p.m. Holiday movie trivia night will test your knowledge of holiday movies from the past several decades. Teams of 1 to 4 can vie for the prize. Doors open at 6:45 p.m., and seating is first come, first served. Just a note that all library buildings, including the museum, will be closed Thursday and Friday, November 27 and 28, for the Thanksgiving holiday. So let's look at some of the buildings that were erected and torn down over the years to help make the state park what it is today. Many people think about the old Dunes Arcade Hotel when thinking about accommodations at the Dunes. And we will talk about that hotel shortly. But Dunes Arcade didn't open until 1931, years after the public was first allowed into the park. Prior to the park's opening, several privately run inns and cottages were available for rent in the Dunes, particularly in the Tremont area. Some of these buildings eventually became part of the park. Prior to Dunes Arcade Hotel, the state owned and managed a small inn in the wooded area north of Tremont. According to some records, the Duneside Inn had been the farmhouse of the Oliver Green family. Oliver was the third generation of his family to live in the Tremont area. His grandfather, Alanson Green, was a well-known abolitionist, rumored to have participated in the Underground Railroad. Alanson owned Green Tavern in New City West, which later became Tremont, along the Detroit-Chicago Road prior to the Civil War. After Alanson retired, his son, Oliver's father, Kenyon, took over. When the state park was formed, the land on which the greenhouse sat was included in the property on the east side of Tremont Road, north of State Park Boundary Road, and south of Wilson Shelter at what is today the location of the Tremont Shelter. I would also like to point out that the Green family is believed to be the origin of Mount Green, which was later renamed Mount Jackson. Just a little tidbit. The state bought the greenhouse in March 1926 and arranged for the building to be used as hotel accommodations in the more wooded area of the park. The state hired managers for the Duneside Inn, the first being Mr. and Mrs. Ralph Swisher of Peru, Indiana. Room and board cost $2.50 a day. Other managers would later include Miss Goldie Swisher in the 1930s, Mrs. Louise Hudson from 1939 into the 1940s, and Ione Flynn Harrington, a well-known Porter County Republican woman who became manager in 1953 at the same time as she took over the management of the Dunes Arcade Hotel and the Pavilion, all of which were only open May to September. Prairie Club records indicate that the Duneside Inn was a favorite place for club members to gather to, beginning or ending a hike with a meal at the inn. The Duneside Inn offered rooms and a restaurant. Later, the state added cabins to the property for visitors to rent. In 1963, the property stopped operating as a hotel and restaurant and was renamed Camp Duneside. It was used as a summer camp by Youth for Christ. For a few years, the main building remained available for groups to rent. The Duneside Inn remained in operation in one form or another until the late 1960s and was torn down in 1968 due to its poor condition. Only a few years later, the Dunes Arcade Hotel was also torn down, ending state-owned hotel accommodations in the Dunes State Park. After the park was established, the state began a project of new construction. The Indiana Dunes State Park Pavilion has long been attracting visitors to the Lake Michigan shoreline. Opened in 1930, the pavilion remains one of the defining features of the state park and a recognizable landmark in the area. Plans for what was called a bathing pavilion began as soon as the park opened its gates in 1926. However, at the time, the state had not completed purchase of the park lands. Improvements could not be made until all of the land for the park had been turned over to state control, which did not happen until 1927. In August 1929, the state announced its plans for a $250,000 improvement project, which included the pavilion. There was almost no public backlash about the expenditure. The first step in constructing the pavilion was building a seawall. The wall stood more than 12 feet beneath the surface and 6 feet above the lake's normal water level. Foundation work began in September, and building construction began October 1st, 1929, just weeks before the stock market collapse and the start of the Great Depression. Contractors on the pavilion were Mustard and Curry Building Corporation of Bloomington, Indiana. Rough weather and lake waters delayed the construction several times. The roof of the pavilion was used as an observation deck and sunbathing space and was initially covered in sand to make it feel like a beach. The building was made of Indiana limestone with red pressed brick and a row of 11 tall arched English steel windows. Dedication of the new pavilion took place June 20th, 1930, even though the building was not finished. Newspaper reports claim that the pavilion, at the end, cost $110,000 to build. Unfortunately, the state did not plan well for the pavilion's future maintenance and updates. The pavilion remained as it was built until 1948, when Tunnon Blank was contracted to remodel the pavilion. The remodel included new equipment, an updated kitchen and dining room, new drainage, and repaired sidewalks. The cost was $15,000. Over the next 2 decades, the building fell into disrepair, even though it was to serve as a fallout shelter during the Cold War. During the 1960s and 1970s, many historic buildings were razed in the dunes, including the Dunes Arcade Hotel and the Duneside Inn. However, the pavilion still stood. In 1973, the state received federal money through the Land and Water Conservation Fund to help cover a renovation, which included a quick service restaurant on the second floor and a new play area on the beach. There were also new showers and concessions added. The cost of this renovation has been reported at anywhere between $200,000 and $400,000, which I agree is a huge difference, but different newspapers reported different numbers. 1 year after that renovation, the state received another grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund to remodel the pavilion restrooms into handicap-accessible spaces. For over 40 years, little or no work was done to the pavilion to maintain the structure, update its facilities, or keep it open. By the 1990s, pavilion activity was a shadow of its former self, and the classic Art Deco building had lost much of its polish. The recent pavilion renovation, although rife with controversy, delays, and resistance, stabilized the structure and reopened it to visitors, many of whom, including myself, had never seen the finished interior in person. The Dunes Arcade Hotel was another early construction project planned by the state for the park. Located directly southwest of the pavilion, the hotel was the only beachfront rental for the park. Designed by Frank Lloyd Wright's son, John Lloyd Wright. John was an architect and toy designer. You may know him better for his best-known toy design, Lincoln Logs, in 1916. After developing Lincoln Logs, about 10 years later, he moved to Long Beach, Indiana. There, he designed several buildings for construction in Northwest Indiana. It's also the time when John began following his father's prairie school style of architecture. Many of John's houses still stand in Long Beach and are on the National Register of Historic Places. During the Great Depression, John completed 2 WPA projects, one of which was the Dunes Arcade Hotel. It was 3 stories tall, offered 52 rooms, and followed the Art Deco style. The hotel opened informally on Sunday, August 16, 1931. Joseph Strack was the initial operator of the hotel. The formal opening took place on the 18th. Over the years, the hotel hosted thousands of visitors, but little was done to update the building. The rooms were very small. One former park employee noted that in about half of the rooms, you had to move the bed to one side in order to be able to close the door. The ceilings were only 7.5 feet tall, and everything was concrete. Sand was easily tracked into the floors and into the rooms. By 1970, the building was considered primitive. Plans were considered for an update to the hotel, but the cost would be enormous and was believed not to be worth it. The building was torn down around 1972, and although several plans included constructing a new hotel, no new lodging was built in the park. One of the most important historical changes made to the dunes at the state park deals with the mouth of Dunes Creek. Originally called Fort Creek and then Wood Creek, Dunes Creek has played an important part in Duneland history. Reportedly the location of Petite Fort and the only Revolutionary War battle in the dunes, Dunes Creek was also central to plans for the Great City West, platted in the 1830s to compete with Michigan City and Chicago for control of trade and industry on the southern shores of Lake Michigan. Obviously, City West failed to thrive, and the mouth of Dunes Creek remained undisturbed for some time. Early in the planning stages of the state park, Indiana Chair of the Conservation Commission, Richard Lieber, commented on the importance of controlling the flow of Dunes Creek, as this north flowing creek helped manage the marshy areas of North Porter County. In 1929, the state began a project to cover nearly 1,500 feet of Dunes Creek near its mouth, using an 84-inch corrugated galvanized iron conduit. The work was touted as a necessary sanitary measure. It just so happened that it would also provide 2 additional acres of parking space at the beach. The newly created lot, once paved with cinders, would accommodate 600 to 700 more cars, which amounted to many more entrance fees. Dunes Creek remained encased for almost 80 years, and many of the old photos and postcards of the state park show a parking lot rather than an open creek. However, covering a flowing creek was not necessarily a good idea. It created flooding and bacterial issues, including high levels of E. coli that frequently caused beach closings. In 2005, the state decided to open a section of the creek, a process called daylighting, and exposing the water to natural light once again. The first part of the project included the construction of a wetland and the removal of a 150-vehicle overflow parking lot. This phase also included plans to make pedestrian traffic easier and safer with a handicap-accessible boardwalk and picnic deck. 3 years later, in September of 2008, a deluge of rain resulted in the collapse of a part of the parking lot that still covered part of Dunes Creek. The DNR chose to daylight the remaining 700 feet of Dunes Creek rather than replace the damaged section of the parking lot. A bridge and sidewalk were added to improve pedestrian safety and accessibility. According to Angel Goins, the final project ultimately restored the creek's natural flow, expanded ecologically sound flood protection using wetlands, created natural fish and wildlife habitats, and improved water quality. Even the number of days the waters of Lake Michigan were closed due to elevated levels of E. coli have declined. The daylighting project won several awards, including the Award for Environmental Excellence from Governor Mitch Daniels, the Conservation and Native Landscaping Award from Chicago Wilderness and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Conservation Project of the Year Award from the Association of Conservation Engineers, and the Jane Dustin Water Quality Award from the Isaac Walton League of America's Indiana chapter. The Dunes Creek Daylighting Project was officially dedicated on June 13, 2012. All of these changes help make the Dunes State Park what it is today. Many people have often asked us at the museum why there isn't more hotel accommodations and lodging available in the state park, but that is above my pay grade. Just so you know, you can find a lot of this information on the Friends of Indiana Dunes Facebook page. I wrote much of it for the Facebook page originally on the history of the hotels and the pavilion, and Angel Goins wrote about the daylighting project. If you'd like to learn more about these historic lodgings, houses, and the history of the state park, feel free to come visit the Westchester Township History Museum. We're located at 700 West Porter Avenue in Chesterton, and we are open every Wednesday from noon to 5 and the second, fourth Saturday of every month from noon to 5 p.m. Or you can call us at 219-983-9715 to make an appointment. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you can join me next month for Historically Speaking.